Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up guys, Dave here from Metal Epidemic. We are back with another review, and for this review Duncan Kyle and myself have been checking out the new EP from Manchester technical deathcore band Monasteries. The band's new EP Silence will be released on April 23rd via Seek and Strike Records. The band have been active since around 2013. They've had a couple of EPs out over the last 7-8 years, with their last one Pulmonary Failure coming out in 2018. We reacted to a track by these guys about a month or so ago on YouTube, and we were all pretty much in agreement that it was a pretty bitchin' track, and we were keen to hear more of the band's new material. They'd mentioned that they were kind of incorporating some new elements into their sound, which we heard a bit of on Allowing Your Traitors to Die.
They had every genre listed on the blog for it. And I remember I was joking at the time saying like that, well maybe that's the whole EP. And then we listened to the track and we're like, no, that's this song. That's this song. Yeah. There is Doom, there's drum and bass, it's all in this one track. Yeah.
But I was keen to hear how the rest of the EP would unfold, if they were going to kind of continue that throughout the other tracks, or if it was just going to be that track. The EP is about 20 minutes long, and it kicks off with a track called Joro Gumo Yokai, which I think is some sort of shape-shifting creature of Japanese folklore, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But as soon as it came on and I saw the track title and the little bit of kind of Japanese sample at the beginning, I was like, Duncan's going to be solid at this point. And to be honest, I wasn't far away either. Once that first riff kicked in, I was like, oh, hold on a minute. The first riff sounds huge, like very dissonant, loaded with lots of kind of sinister atmosphere. It's like a perfect kind of introduction to the band. But it does not take long before Monasteries switch things up and take you on this like fucking monstrous ride of like techie, disjointed riffs, breakneck grooves, punishing blast beats, and it was clear, like when we did the reaction video, these guys were very good at kind of keeping things interesting. They don't do paint by numbers unless they're like mathematical equations. They are like all over the place, and it's the same in this first track. When it kicked in, it just constantly shifts in and out of different rhythms, tempos. Every riff sounds absolutely devastating. I couldn't find any moments where it sounded like generic or predictable at all on that first track, and on the rest of the EP, to be honest. I never knew what was coming next, and I kind of like that, because there's so much stuff coming out these days where you're just like, here comes the breakdown, here comes the fast death metal bit, here comes it, you know what I mean? You can hear it coming, but I didn't get that at all with this release. And that's quite difficult to do, you know, whilst continuing to keep the whole thing flowing and not sound just all really like kind of disjointed and like a quote that we used to use years ago, a bag of riffs, you know what I mean?
Bag of riffs, Steve, yes!
Bag of riffs, bringing it back. But even though these tracks had a lot of kind of moving parts, but they never sounded disjointed. They transition really smoothly between the parts, either by expanding on the part before, like the same riff with like a different tempo or a different rhythm, or even playing it kind of higher or lower on the fretboard. They also use some really nice kind of background work. There's some nice atmosphere, and there's some almost symphonic sounds at times too, which kind of adds this other layer and kind of texture into the mix, which I really liked, especially on 1 Minute to Midnight. And although they do have like deathcore at the kind of center of their sound, I really liked when they let those kind of like techie moments on the EP take more of a kind of spotlight. When I was listening to it, I could always thinking was, this is very Tony Danza. And like, you know, me and Tony Danza are like,
and he's tap dance extravaganza, Dave. Yeah, I remember it well.
It's got a bit of that to it, but there's also that kind of almost a bit of a kind of iron dissonance, kind of bleakness to it at times as well. And that kind of bleak kind of moment, those kind of little bleak streaks throughout the music, they do kind of rear their head on more than one occasion throughout the EP. Digital Suicide was another one, like, for as much as it goes into a lot of kind of like techy, genty grooves, there are parts of that track that really experiment with the kind of gloomier styles, like the kind of melodic black metal that we heard on Allowing Your Traitors to Die. They don't linger on it too long though, you know, it never becomes like a core part of their sound. They just kind of bring it in enough for the tone of the track to slightly alter just for a moment. And I really like that side of the band as well. They're not afraid to kind of try something different. Because, like I said before, we've seen a horde of like deathcore bands coming out lately that all sound really similar. So I like that Monasteries are trying to keep things a bit more kind of fresh. And same with Allowing Your Traitors to Die. Again, they've got the kind of blackened elements woven into that as well, plus that little bit of drum and bass that we heard. But it all works really well together. It sounds really like cohesive in amongst the kind of the Danza-esque riffing. There's a moment though, I meant to mention, there's a moment on Allowing Your Traitors to Die, I think it's just after the first kind of melodic black metal section, and I can't believe I never clocked it when we did the reaction, but the guitar comes in and does this like big,
it's a big like 70s rock solo.
Like, how did I not notice that the first time I listened?
Because
to
it was a million things being flung at you, Dave.
Possibly.
You wear that woman gif where all the sausages are flung at her face. That's what it's like listening to that track. It's just like, bad with hot dogs.
I fucking love that part.
It's so good, yeah.
It sounds out of place, but it completely works at the same time. Really cool. And then the EP finishes with the title track Silence, which was really cool as well. A lot of really nice synths in there. I love the sounds they went with, especially towards the end of the track. There's a big kind of ominous background layer that just kind of lingers there. It's really cool. But more than that, the kind of switch ups between the riffs and just the tightness of the whole thing really impressed me. I love the almost like a little fake ending to that track as well, where the track starts to fade out and you think that's it done. And they're like, we're not finished. And then they come back in with a big fucking heavy groove at the end. I'm sure Kyle was really happy that they didn't
came
fade
back
out.
When they came back, like had they not come back, he wouldn't have been. But he was happy when they did. Another really kind of enjoyable release from these guys. I wasn't really aware of them until we did the reaction track, but thoroughly impressed with this EP. Really enjoyed it. What did you make of this, Duncan? Did you like Silence? Actually, I think like when we listened to Allow Your Traitors to Die, I specifically pointed out the fact that they were doing a lot of things, but it didn't feel too disjointed. So my concern was coming into a longer release, if that was going to be the case, because that's a technique that works really well on that track, but do I think that's a technique that could be sustained on 3 or 4 tracks? Where does that in itself become predictable, in that the band are not predictable? You know what I mean? There's and that's not the case here, because I think Allowing Your Traitors to Die is the one that does the most jumps. Which is interesting that's the single they picked, because once again it's probably the hardest marketable song on the release. Which once again makes me kind of love them, because they're like that. We're going to put out the most complicated one as the taster to what is coming out. I'm going to echo a lot of what you've said here. I think the production is tight and like really fucking heavy, but once again I could make everything out. There's kind of ambient synths being used for effect for sure, but there's also little kind of almost like arpeggiated bits that play through the background of certain songs for maybe about 2 bars, and then they disappear. And it is all I could keep thinking about, and don't laugh at me when I say this, is Bob Ross the painter, right? So see when Bob Ross was painting, right? Stick with me here.
Okay.
When Bob Ross was painting, Bob Ross would be like, and I'm just going to do this, and he'd be like, and you know what, I'm just going to put a little tree in here. I'm just going to put this little tree, and he's going to be my little friend. And you know, how about we put and that's what I felt like listening to this band, is there was very much like, when I was a bit playing, I just, for whatever reason, I just imagined the guitarist going, how about we just do this here? And that it became a really interesting listen, because at times there would be a part that jumped in where I'd be like, you know, like instantly the first time the first part kicks in, I'm like, is that one step too far? But by the time it looked once, I was like, no, actually that fits really, really, really well. Yeah. And that kind of happens quite a lot on this release, where I felt like the jump was maybe a step too far. You call it bag of riffs, I call it musical fuckery, because they're having a whale of time writing this. I just imagine just a giant sheet with different post-it notes all over it for different parts, like trying to construct the songs. And in a lot of respects, I think what they've done is not only show musical versatility and dexterity, but at the same time a high degree of craft over songwriting. On the second listen, the bits that I was not... There was a few things on the first listen I wasn't keen on, but on the second listen, they totally fit for me. I'd become acclimated to what they were doing. I think it's Digital Suicide has what can only be described as piston machine gun bass drum guitar bit, which I don't want to be a Kyle here, but I don't think he's doing that live. It's just so machine gun, like so tight that but without being a Kyle, I fucking loved it. I loved it. And because they're doing... But the thing is, I don't know how that gravitates to them playing live. They're using... They're up front with it. There's drum and bass in here. There's synths. There's going to be... When they play live, there's going to be samples and stuff like that done in the background. And if that's a bit of it where the band cuts out and it's like a digital fucking double bass drum in the guitar, he'll have to do it live regardless. Even if he's playing, he has to do it live. But if it's something like that, then fuck it. I'm fine with it. But it works in the context of the song. The first time I listened to it, it was just too jarring for me. The second time I listened to it, completely worked. So little melody on this album. They use it so reserved, but when it does, it stands out all the more. I think there's maybe about like 3 uses of it in the entire EP. But where they do put it in, it just adds a little tree. I'm just gonna put my little friend this little tree in here. That's how it felt. Yeah, I mean, this is it's not something I could actively... Here's the quandary I'm in. It's not something I could actively recommend to someone without really knowing what they listen to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think if you are a musician, if you're someone that enjoys the craft, and you are, like Dave said, maybe getting a little bit tired of every deathcore band just now doing the same thing. It used to be the booms. It's not the booms anymore. It's ominous synths in the background, huge sections in the breakdown, where everything just cuts out and like these kind of drones. That's the new thing. That's the new black, right? If you're feeling that's a bit formulaic, then Monasteries have the answer for you, because I love their breakdowns are fucking minted, because what they do is they do like the boom, and you hit there, and then you're like, right, here comes the next bit, and then there's nothing, and it's like dun dun dun. I'm like, oh, what you doing? And boom, again, and I love that. I think it's really... I imagine they're smiling when they're writing it, which makes me smile when I listen to it, because it's stuff that's just a little bit... They're not doing anything hugely remarkable. And the last thing I'll say is, I did hear it the first time through on that track with the kind of 70s guitar sound, which I remember at the time I wanted to say, oh, that's like what Poppy does on Concrete. Interestingly enough, Concrete's a really great example of like a comparison to this. If you listen to Poppy's Concrete, don't switch off, because I know you're a Monasteries fan, please. Listen to it's like Bob Ross, there's a point. When you listen to that track, there's a lot going on in it. And they mix she mixes a lot of different things in, but it's very conventional and commercial. What they're doing is essentially the same idea, but taking it to a more technical death metal style. But what I love about it is that both those tracks know exactly where I'm going to put this cheesy guitar bit in here, because it's what the track needs. You didn't think it needed it when you were listening to it. You didn't think for a second, but when I listened to it, I'm like, yeah, that was always supposed to go there. That riff was always supposed to go on that part. That is very, very, very difficult to do. It's very difficult to pluck something completely from the side, fit it in, and make it sound like that was always going to be the obvious musical point to go to. because it's not. So yeah, I think Silence is a great release. I think if you are not aware of Monasteries, please be aware of Monasteries. I'm so glad that they've landed like a record deal. I'm looking forward to, weirdly, this is where Dave will laugh at me, Distant. I'm like that, keep it EP length. Monasteries, I'm saying give me an album. I got to the end of this, I wasn't exhausted at all, and there's a lot more going on here. So yeah, this is it's a fucking great release, and a British band. Who would have fucking thought it? There must be something in the water. Pupil Slicer and Monasteries, a couple of weeks apart, the most techie fucking all over the place stuff going around just now. Really satisfying to listen to. I think the UK might be having their second win at the moment. So yeah. The Dream Killer's about to shit all over this. I can tell.
Kyle.
I can already. I can see these faces like that. They spoke highly of this. Oh my dear.
Hold two of them.
Let's do it, Kyle.
This band has, like you said, a lot going for it. A lot. Like, they're completely unpredictable. They're not doing anything I've really heard before. Okay, they've got a massive deathcore, like, core, for want of a better word right now. But they're honed in on that. But they bring in blackened elements and synths and that one drum and bass little thing. And doing that live is easy. They'll have a click track for the drummer. And they'll all play to that. It'll be easy. But they have some really good, like, the breakdowns and stuff. I really enjoyed those. Like, the effects on them and stuff, they were great. They were really good. Like, the background effects and the riffs and stuff were really good too. But my first note, in really big capital letters.
Is this what you sent me earlier on?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Do you like drums? And I can't fucking hear anything else. Because, oh my god, there are 5 members in this band and not one of them is the drummer. Because all that's over this fucking album is sampled, plastic sounding shit drums. They're fucking horrible and they are the loudest thing in the mix. It's all I could hear. And I'm just like, you know what? You had all of the rest of it going for you. Great song structure. They're very, very, very good at playing the riffs. Amazing breakdowns and, things that are completely unexpected. The vocalist was incredible doing the lows and the highs and the screaming parts. He even did a pig squeal that I appreciated because it wasn't a complete one. He switched it up in the middle. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then they covered it all. The loudest thing in the mix is the fucking drums, which sound horrendous. It's like, nah, you fucked it. You completely fucked it. You had something going for you so strong, and you just went, I'm just going to put it in this hole and bury it in shit. So, I mean, they undid all of the good stuff. Even that ending, like you said, they were like, it went out, and then it came back, and I was like, yes, no fade-outs. But they still fucked it. Just like that song you said, Digital Suicide, right?
Yep.
The one you mentioned with the machine gun bits, that was the worst offender of everything, because it was just like, why would you do that? This is heavy fucking metal, man. Like, play the fucking drum. I don't want to hear your goddamn computer play kick samples at me, If the drummer can't do it, get a new drummer.
But I mean, I would argue that if, once again, it's all about context. If the technique is to have something kind of like industrial sounding,
yeah, but then why do you have a drummer in your band? When I looked at the photo, it's like, here's a drummer.
Here's my counter, right? Here's what I don't want to. Don't make me use Nine Inch Nails as a weapon, right? I will use it.
Yeah, but they mixed the two elements. They mixed the live drummer and the thing drummer.
They had a drum solo in A Perfect Drug, which no one could play.
Jerome Dillon can play that fucking thing. I've seen him do it.
He's the first drummer to play it live.
He might be the only one. 20
years after it was written. 20 years after it was written, they finally managed to get a drummer that could play it. So I think there's a part. I see what you're saying, but once again, I think the caveat for the band is the fact that they're clearly saying that one of their big influences is is drum and bass, which has its roots in industrial. So I think that's where
I get it, but the performances on the drums are like a drummer would play it. It's got, nothing is hit more than 3 times at a time. Everything is like perfectly mapped out for a drummer to play, and the drummer probably played it in the rehearsal room and probably wrote all the parts. Why is he not on the album? That's my problem. It's like, why do you have? And the thing is, it's the loudest thing in the mix. It's all like I took one ear off, and all I could hear on the ear I was listening to was fucking drums, and everything else was buried. And I was just like, And it's not even good samples. It's just straight one kick sample, one snare sample, one tom, and it's just like, why? Why would you do this to such a great sounding? Everything else is so good. And then you took the worst element and made it the loudest thing.
I had no issues with the production at all.
No, the rest of the production, I absolutely loved it. The guitar tones were
drums.
fantastic. I could hear the bass, the vocal was up front and in your face, and there was no like obvious peaks or anything. There was no clipping or distortion. There was really good, except for this one massive honking turd floating right in your face. Because it was just so ridiculously overpowering in the whole thing. They could have turned it down a few decibels and it would have been still as gut-wrenching, still as punchy, and you wouldn't have noticed that it was such a fake-sounding drum. And it's just, it completely took me out of it, the whole, as you can tell. It was just...
But tell us how you really feel, Kyle.
Feel like they should go back and tell their producer to fucking try again.
I'm weirdly going to side with Dave here. I'm usually the first person to write a message that says, "Did a drummer record this album?"
Yeah,
I thought the drums were fine in the mix. I didn't think they were overpowering at all. I made it.
Maybe it was my headphones. Maybe it was the headphones.
Did you have it in drum setting?
The thing is, though, when I took it off the one ear and it's all I could hear, that was the giveaway for me. I couldn't hear guitar, I couldn't hear vocals, nothing, just drum. And I was like, what is going on here? And then I listened to it more and I was like, oh, come on. There's clearly a talented drummer behind that. But he's not on the album. He might have been on the others. I know they've been together for a few years and released a few albums, but they're a 5-piece, but only 4 of them are on this album. And I'm like...
I believe the drummer has played on this recording. I think he's probably using
replaced.
I think he's probably using triggers of some kind, but whether it's MIDI or whatever, I'm not entirely sure. Like the kind of electronic drum kit with a superior drummer type
Could
samples,
well
that type of idea. But
it's
do
been
believe
aligned as well.
It.
It's completely perfect all the way through.
Yeah. But that whole
like,
works with the rest of the sound as well, because it's a very tight machine-like sound they have.
Yeah.
So the drums need to be like that as well to have.
But
that
the rest
impact,
of it, the thing is, the rest of it doesn't add up to that either, because the rest of it's pretty straight metal. Okay, they've got a couple of synths and like a drum and bass break in one song, but it's like it doesn't come together and justify the use of that for me. It's like if you're coming out with all of this metal stuff, you expect to hear a drummer that is a person and hasn't been completely butt-fucked by a computer being time-aligned and MIDI'd and all this stuff, and it's not superior drummer because at least they layer their samples, so it's not the same one every time.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what's going on, but it feels like misrepresentation at the worst and like maybe just a bad decision at the best, and it just gets me every time, because the rest of it is so good and I really, really, really did enjoy it. But then it comes down to this one thing and it was just so in your face and just like, we've used a one kick sample. I'm like, you could have done such a better job. You could have just put that little bit more effort in. Paid $300 for Superior Drummer and got a better sound, Because the Superior Drummer can be made to sound quite like a real drummer if you map each one a little bit separately and you don't 127 it all the time. And I'm just like, you could do that and this would sound so much better because it would be a bit more natural, like guitars sound natural and all that, and the vocalist, it's, all these instruments are natural sounding instruments, aside from synth and drum and bass drums, of course, but there's so little of that. I have trouble justifying the use of something like that on an album like this. That's all.
We know. This is just for those that have listened to this review and this is the first time you've ever heard us talk about an album release. This is not the first time we've had this discussion. This is
I'm sorry,
it's consistent. I'll be honest. I hate flip-floppers. So you listen to certain people online review and they're like that. You know what? I just can't stand that kind of Iron Maiden style vocalist. And then like 3 reviews later, clearly an Iron Maiden style vocalist, like, the vocals are the best part of this album. Listen to the cadence. You're like, you don't like that. At least he's consistent.
True. Okay. Let's get into ratings then for the new Monasteries EP. I will kick us off. I really like this. I thought it was a really strong EP. And to be honest, I feel like every time we review an EP now, I'm eating my words because I've said in the past I don't like EPs, but here I am again saying this is a really good EP.
Yep. You're a liar. That's fine.
There are...
Where's your consistency, huh?
I'm happy to be proved wrong though, Kyle.
Okay, that's fine.
And these guys are proving me wrong because I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think there are parts of Monastery sound that's familiar, I'm a big Tony Danza fan, as I've said. A fan of pretty much anything Josh Travis does, to be fair. But although they have similar characteristics, I think Monasteries are also pushing the boundaries a bit and trying to carve out their own sound, their own niche, which I can really appreciate. And to be honest, going with the level of musicianship and songwriting they have just now, I only expect them to get better, to be honest. I'm like what you said, Duncan. I'd love to hear an album with this. I really would. There's so much going on that I think it'd be really exciting to hear a kind of full length from these guys. I think I'll probably go in at a 4 out of 5 on this one. I really enjoyed this. I've went back to it quite a few times since we got the EP into review. So yeah, I'd recommend it. I really enjoyed it. I didn't have any issues with the production. I thought everything kind of fit and everything sounded okay. But that's just my preference, I suppose. Duncan, what did you think?
I'm going to join you in a 4. Yeah, I think there's a whole hell of a lot to love in here. I think, once again, I'll be interested. What I would love for them on an album to do is certainly not change what they're doing, because I do really like it, but I would love to, weirdly, I think well-placed instrumental, almost kind of stripped back stuff, connecting different parts would really reward this band. I think if you get like 10 tracks where it's all like that, I think it might be slightly overwhelming, but I think they've clearly got plenty of elements, and they've got a mastery over a lot of different instruments that I would like to see them branch out. There's a lot of styles they even just touch on without going too far in, that I think that the scope for this band is huge, like absolutely huge. 4 feels good for me, and I am very, very interested to see what the long form release from the band is going to sound like.
Yeah. Cool. And Kyle?
I mean, I know I sound like I shit all over it, but they do have a lot going for them. They really do. They do sound unique. They have very interesting, strong structures. They're very good musicians. They know what they want to do. They are themselves, and they're not trying to follow any trend, which I really appreciate. But so I would score it highly for all of that, but because of the horrific drums, I'm just going to come in at a 3.5.
3.5. Okay, fair enough. This one drops on April 23rd via Seek and Strike Records. If you want to check them out, it's facebook.com/Monasteries Music. I'll put a little link in the description below to their Facebook, Bandcamp, and any pre-orders that are available for the EP. Let us know what you think. If you've heard the couple of singles they've released, let us know what your thoughts and opinions are. Happy to hear them. And thanks for checking out the review. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.